Good afternoon. Well, am I saying good afternoon? Good
Good
morning. Good
morning.
morning. We're recording this in the morning, and lovely to be here again. My name is Dr. Sylvia Smith, normally the host of Social Workers Matter, but today we have the lovely Sharon Jennings in the house, and we're turning the tables today. Today, Sharon is going to interview me. She agreed to do this. She's got her topics that she wants us to cover. So she's in control today.
Don't say that.
So Sharon, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I hope you don't hear. There was just a little bit of noise outside. I'm good though. I'm good. We've got matching backgrounds,
Yes.
so I'm hoping that means we're in some kind of synchronistic something this morning.
Let's hope.
We're gonna see. We're gonna see how that goes.
So for those of you who are listening, obviously you're not going to see this, but we'll have this interview uploaded to my YouTube channel, and there you'll see both Sharon and I are in synchronicity, whatever it is. We've both
Yes.
got Caribbean backgrounds on our screens, which probably says something about where we wish we were.
Yes, it does. It really does. Yes.
Oh, okay.
A lot about me anyway. Yeah.
All right. So what we agreed, Sharon, was that you would take the lead, and I'll leave that to you.
Yeah.
And as much as it's a struggle for me, I am going to comply, and I'm going to be good.
Okay. Okay. Wow. Okay. So this is
Oh dear.
this is a challenge for both of us, I think.
Indeed.
Okay. So Sylvia,
Yes, my dear.
Dr. Sylvia Smith, I'm sure you have people know that you've got a PhD as well. So you are Dr. Sylvia Smith. And I guess maybe to start with a very general question of
Mhm.
because you actually do this for people that you interview. You kind of say a lot about, who they are and what they've done, and you kind of
Mm.
lead them. And I'm actually not doing that for you because I'm going to ask you to do that. So if I was to ask you a very general question, who is Sylvia Smith?
Mm.
Who is and acknowledging, I think, the different, maybe not very different, but the different facets of Sylvia Smith, because you
Mm.
are, you've got a social work background, you are a mentor, you're a coach, you're a trainer, you're an academic, you're a writer, and then, I mean, that's that. And then, not to, make light of, you have a family, you have a child, you have sisters, you have, all of that. And one of the things, I don't know if people know this, sorry, I'm just going off on one. People, I don't know if people know this, but every year you take 1,000 members of your family away every year to go out about in the countryside. I mean, that just sounds, we could do a whole interview about that.
For
But
another
so,
show. That's
yeah,
for
I know.
another one, another episode.
So there's all of that. And then
Mm.
there's you as a media person. I don't know what the term might
Mm.
be.
Mm.
But all the podcasts and the videos and
Mm.
the music, your radio shows.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
with all of that, I guess in mind, and I'm sure I've left something out, but who is Sylvia Smith?
Wow. And if you're watching this, you'll see me looking rather quizzical as Shan's reeling all this off. And um I think and the other day I put a post on LinkedIn, I think, and other bits of my social media, um because I rediscovered this word polymath.
Oh,
Um and for me, I think from from the get-go, I've always wanted to do many things. Not that I dibble and dabble and don't see things through, because that's absolutely not the case. I'm an absolute finisher. I do. If I start something, I will finish it.
absolutely.
As difficult and challenging as it might be at times. But I do have a lot of interests, and I absolutely want to explore and do deep dives into all of them. But I also believe that I'm a curious person. I'm well-rounded. And it shows itself. Even, I mean, recently I was having a discussion with my son about some of the dynamics that are going on at work, his workplace. And I think to myself, you know, part of why I'm able to kind of converse with him and dialogue with him about some of that is also because I take an interest in business, and I take an interest in how organizations work, and I take an interest in how teams work. And I surprise myself sometimes with some of the stuff I come out with, and they resonate with him. And I just think it's my curious nature that that helps me to kind of sustain that. When I think back to my own childhood, my curious nature was probably nosiness. Always, you know, one of the things that my family love to say is that, you know, if we're going for a walk or if I'm driving dangerously, I'll always be peeking into people's windows to see what's going on. And, you know, there are countries that I've been to in Europe where they've got fantastic windows and you can see right into their homes. And I always find myself wondering, I wonder what their lives are like. I wonder what they get up to. I wonder what they do. So I think I am a very curious person. And in a way, the things that I have an interest in stem from that curiosity. And I just want to go with them a lot of the time. Now, in an environment where people value specialisms and expertise, and single-minded expertise, that don't do nothing for me. Because I know that I'm curious, I have interest in lots of things, and I often want to explore them. So curiosity is a big part of who I am, I think.
Yes. And I think what you said about it's not just dabbling, it's not just a kind of a flitting from thing to thing curiosity, it's a going into it. That's what it feels like. Because all of those things that I mentioned, they're kind of broad and wide, and in some ways very different, but you have become accomplished in all of those things. So it's not like you tried that and you tried a bit of social work and you did a bit of this. You're actually gone into all of those things, and they are in a way, they kind of are your specialisms. If we can have, I like the word polymath. I don't know what polymath means, but poly means a lot, I guess. And I don't know what the math means, but it means a lot of things. If it means a lot of things,
the math don't mean math for sure.
You don't mean math. No, I didn't think it did.
That's not one of my specialisms.
No. That's one of the things you're not curious about.
Absolutely not. Oh boy.
Yeah, but it's something about having I think the curiosity, and then the something else, I don't know what it is, that draws you into those things. And then you really go in deep, and you kind of, they become a part of your, as I said, your specialisms. You can, they become your areas of knowledge because you know a lot about those.
And I mean, you know, it's been over many years. It's not, kind of like overnight. And I've always kind of been a bit anxious about putting out there that I'm this person who is this, that, and the other. I very much value having a strong anchor around the interests that I have. So, I've been broadcasting for over 10 years, and I've been podcasting for over 5 years. So, for me, those are strong anchors from which I can kind of speak authoritatively about these interests. Social work, next year will be 40 years that I've been qualified. I mean, and I know most things about this profession, not everything, I know most things about this profession, and while I was a practitioner and a leader, a manager, I moved a lot sideways and had lots of different experiences, but they all kind of culminated in a very rich background. And not, the other thing I was also thinking, I'm quite big in terms of voluntary work, right? Because I'm involved in a couple of charities, and that stems from a very, very long time ago. So, I do get into things, and I find it difficult not to see them through, sometimes to my peril. To my peril, because I don't drop things.
Yes.
And that can be difficult sometimes.
Yeah. Yes. Energy wise, I can imagine that.
Energy, and then the whole thing around being able to say no and
yes,
and that
yeah.
sort of thing. So yeah.
But if you were to kind of look at all of those different things, and adding in what you said about the charities as well, do you see a thread running through?
Oh yeah. And I suppose the other thing I'm trying to do a lot more now is to see what the thread is.
Yeah.
And I that's the way my mind works as well. If I'm doing something, I want to see how it links to other things I'm doing.
Yeah.
You and I, we do leadership training together. But then I see it as linking very much to the work I do in coaching.
Yes.
And mentoring and teaching. So I kind of have really begun to try to join the dots, because for me, that's important. There was a period in my life where I did not join the dots. I just did things.
Yeah, okay.
As I'm sure most of us will kind of recognize. And, you get to a point in life, which I think I'm at now, where I'm trying to make sense of the things I've done and the things I'm doing.
Yes.
So that's a task in itself.
So so you've kind of got a thread going through some of those things. What could you thread through some of the other aspects of your roles, like, I guess the kind of teaching? Because I kind of see you as, if I see you as kind of two things, and in whatever role you are. One is something around the teacher, the teaching, holding wisdom. Maybe not. Yeah, it's the wisdom holder, and then that might spin off into teaching or what have you. But even when you're doing your radio shows, there's that sense of, you're holding the space, but you're holding the wisdom. And I think the other thread, I think, is something around communication. I think those two are combined anyway, but I think there's something about communication in its small ways and in its big ways. So like your coaching, the one-to-one communication, and then your broadcasting, which is communicating wider. That's how I kind of I don't know. Does that?
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. It makes absolute sense. And I as much as when I'm broadcasting, I enjoy my music.
Yes.
But I also, as you rightly say, see that there is a role there for spreading knowledge, informing, not to the point where it's kind of nauseating, but I also kind of have this thing about accessibility, and I try to sort of wrap up what I'm doing in, let's say, humor, but I also want people to get messages as well, because I think knowledge should be accessible. And good teaching is about making it accessible. As much as I've ensconced myself in academia, I also don't want to be so removed from ordinary people that they can't relate to me. So I do try really hard to make myself relatable.
Yeah.
Again, sometimes at my peril.
Okay.
Yeah, but,
Well, what do you mean? What do you mean?
well, you know, there is this thing, and I mean, you know, this may sound absolutely ridiculous, but there is a sense that sometimes, even if as an academic, there is something that that's a bit mystique about academics, which they thrive on, or you know. But when you make yourself relatable, of course, sometimes people think they can say anything they want to you,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
and so there's that balance that I try to strike. I don't want to be remote and unrelatable too, but
yeah.
at the same time, I don't want to be taken for granted.
Absolutely.
And you know, have people not respect my space or my privacy or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's a there's a fine
It
kind of
is.
balance, isn't there?
It
Yeah,
is a balance. It is a balance.
yeah,
But I
yeah.
think that that whole thing about accessibility,
Mm.
making, helping people to, getting, putting out that message so people can get the message.
Yes.
That for me is the basics of communication
Yeah.
in the professions that we have.
Yes.
But also it is what people are talking about in terms of leadership now.
Yes.
That they
Yeah.
don't want that mystique. They don't want that, well, who is the leader and what do they stand for? They want to see it. They want to they don't want to just hear it. They want to see it happening in front of them.
Yeah.
And they want that realness. And I think that's what you do. When you say you work hard at it, I don't know what you meant by that term, but it doesn't come across at you as you're working hard. I think there's it just feels like a flow and a naturalness of how you do it.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, I hear that too. I suppose when I'm thinking about working hard at it, I'm thinking that I'm very thoughtful about it.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So
Yeah,
that's probably, working hard is not the right term, but
yeah,
I try to be thoughtful.
yes, yeah,
And that's so important, because I know there've been occasions when I've been a little thoughtless,
okay.
and so I know
And
the
we are,
difference.
yes.
I know the difference, and particularly when people feed back to me that, perhaps I've been a little thoughtless.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's more what I meant.
Yes.
I think certainly in terms of my connection with places like the Tavistock and Portman, it's helped me to develop a more thoughtful attitude and approach to what I do, and most things, everything I do, not just work.
Yeah.
But, even how I live my life and so on. That's been really helpful.
It feels like you have, and that's one of the things I notice about how you hold space sometimes, is that you bring that kind of holding gentleness, that consideration, and almost a kind of, and again, a wisdom about what might be happening for people and what we might be needing. And you mentioned the Tavistock and other places, those influences. But what I also, and that is not even a but, and the other thing I like about the way you do that sometimes is you do that with a kind of pinch of salt. So you don't take it fully the serious, like let's hold the silence, and then it becomes a grimness about it. You do it in such a light, almost playful way, not playful in terms of light, not in terms of it's silly. It's not silly. Like when you said humor, you bring humor to it, but it's still serious and it's still important. And the mixture, the way you kind of do that is, it's just really good. It's just really good to be on the receiving end of that.
Yeah, and in a way, you see, my thing is very much about how I want to be treated.
Yes.
And I know that we're all different, and sometimes certain things land well and certain things don't land well. But I know for me, if I can relate to the person as another human being, and they show a playful side of themselves, but yet can traverse into the serious nature of what people may be feeling and so on, for me, it really helps, because if there's warmth in that,
Yes, absolutely.
And if I can connect with somebody, or with a room, in a warm way, I then see the journey to the serious stuff is much easier.
Yes.
Because you present as a human being, and this is proven to me again and again and again in my relationships with people or my interactions with people. You come to the space with warmth. You come to the space with some level of playfulness and humor and laughter, and then people feel they can trust you, and then the magic happens.
Yes.
And that's how I like people to deal with me.
Yeah. Yes. While you were talking, one of the things I didn't mention earlier was, I guess I kind of said the whole thing about you teaching and being an academic, but didn't specifically talk about the work you do around anti-racism.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to go. Do you want to go there? Shall we go?
Yeah, let's go there.
Okay.
And let me preface that by saying that it's going to help with the paper I'm still writing.
Yes. Okay.
You'll be happy to know, Sharon, I did a bit more yesterday.
Okay,
I did a bit more yesterday. So yeah.
Yes.
So all this is helping my thought process, which can be a bit all over the place. But yeah.
So yes. What about anti-racism? Because I think, I guess the anti-racist work that you do.
And we've worked together.
And we've worked together, yeah.
I also have to big up Chantel, big up Joe. All of us work in this kind of collective way. But let me tell you that, and you and I have talked about this before, Sharon. I was reluctant to get involved in anti-racist training, practice. I was reluctant to get involved in that. And even as I'm writing this paper and I'm looking back at the journey, I could see why, because it's a bit depressing when you look back to the 70s, the 80s, and the struggles we were having at that point.
Yeah.
And then you begin to work your way towards where we're at now. And it's so awful that so much has not changed.
Yes.
And the fact that, yes, of course, there are political reasons why we've taken the journey we've taken. And I know for me personally, I can relate to that. Some of the things that I went through in terms of my own life, of course, and the changes I had in my perceptions about race and racism. And what I mean by that is that I think during the Thatcher years, right? May she rest in peace. But during those years where we were, and Tony Blair's years, we were encouraged to, move on, get rich. I can absolutely relate to the fact that I, during that period, put race and racism on the back burner. Not, of course, that I wasn't experiencing racism, but then it wasn't as prominent.
Yeah.
And in terms of what was going on in the country, it was almost that we were distracted into thinking that, if we do this, we can be successful.
Yes.
So I totally bought into that. And even when I think about my history as a social worker and so on, I was kind of, in the midst of all that. When you step back and you begin to reflect and look at what some of our predecessors were saying about what was wrong with our society, in terms of race, racism, discrimination, and so on, you begin to think, not a lot has changed.
No, not at all.
And to be part of that again, I was reluctant.
Yeah.
I was reluctant. I kind of felt, where I want to put my energies, it's not in trying to, transform a racist society that rejects, denies access, and I don't want to see at their table. However, I think when I encountered you guys, and we were able to speak honestly about what we're trying to do, and I began to reframe it in terms of thinking, well, okay, we can only do our bit, but we have a responsibility to do our bit.
Mm.
And as wearing as it may be, we have our kids coming behind us. We want to, try to make the world a better place for them to thrive and grow. And we also have the knowledge of what we've been through before. So we don't need to forget that. We don't need to, we can be going into these spaces saying, look, we were here before.
Yeah. Yes.
Do you know what I mean? We've got that narrative that we can actually, that we kind of processed a lot better, and we can communicate that. So I thought to myself, well, actually it's worth doing, but it's not easy.
It's not easy. No.
It's not easy, but it is worth doing. And at least we have the narrative and the benefit of what our folks before us went through, and we can communicate that in these new spaces.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think your use of the word distraction, I think that's the other thing that's the other area of wisdom we have, is how we can be distracted. Yeah. From really acknowledging racism and how it works, and and the messages it's giving us. We can, there's still distractions now. I mean, we can be distracted now. And so we can also, bring that to the narrative too, that wisdom around that and how that works. Yeah. So yeah, but you're absolutely right. It's not easy. And I think when we were talking before, and one of the things we said was that, I know that this was certainly the case back in the 80s and 90s. People got identified as race trainers, Black trainers. If you were a Black trainer, you were a race trainer. And you weren't anything else. And I think it's something about not being identified as that in that very limiting way that can be. Because, as you said, we're bringing a lot more knowledge. We're bringing, knowledge of the past and things that have gone before, but we're also bringing other areas of wisdom to that as well.
I absolutely agree. I was just thinking, as you spoke there, I had a recent conversation with a supervisee of mine, because I also supervise doctorate students, and one of them is just about finishing her work. She's doing some corrections to her thesis and so on, and her work is very much about racism as a Black African woman, and she's done some research with other Black African colleagues who have a different experience again. But one of the things she and I was discussing was the fact that, you're not only about your race. And I think she really appreciated hearing that, because there is a tendency to pigeonhole us. Yeah. And I know I've kind of always resisted that, and I've always wanted to have a kind of a holistic experience around my identity as a social worker, as a social work leader, as a thinker, as an educator, and so on. So that was another dilemma for me, because although I have a very rich lived experience around race and racism, I didn't want it to just be about that. Yeah. But it was so funny, because when I was doing my own doctorate and I was writing up my own research, and again, I was, even during that time, I was kind of resisting looking at race and racism. And my supervisor, one of my supervisors at the time, the now deceased Andrew Cooper, said, well, as a Black woman, you are going to have thoughts, and you are going to see things through a particular lens. That's part of your experience. And, bless him, that helped to release me. And it wasn't the only thing I discussed in my research, but it certainly was a significant part of it. And it was almost as though if I didn't talk about that, I'd be denying myself
Yeah. Yeah.
and who I am, and part of what I'm about. So it's all of the above. It's not
Yeah.
just, you know, one dimension.
No.
I always am suspicious when I'm asked to deliver anti-racist and anti-discriminatory training when everybody else, you know, I may be the only Black person on the team.
Yeah.
I'm being asked to deliver that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I'm not going to do it, but I'll bloody
Yeah.
well ask you.
Yeah.
But why?
Why? Yeah.
Why am I the one that has to be
Yeah.
delivered?
Yeah.
And I think these are the kinds of debates that we have to sort of exercise the muscle around having healthy debate around it.
Yes.
It's not that
Yeah.
you're not going to do it,
Yeah.
because it may be imperative that you do, but you're going to ask, let's
Yeah,
think
yeah.
about why I'm being asked to do this. Let's be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
You know, and interestingly, folks are usually caught on the back foot when you ask them that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You
They
know?
haven't really thought about it at
No.
all. And I guess that's the other thing, is that as the Black trainer or the Black consultant,
Mhm.
you are there to also do the thinking for the team or for the organization.
Yeah.
They just bring you in, you do it all.
Yeah.
And that's
And provide the answers.
and yeah, absolutely. But what I was going to say
Mhm.
about, if we take, and I don't know if this, I don't even know what I even mean by this, but so one of the things that we don't want, your student doesn't want, we didn't want, is to be pigeonholed in terms of, not just in terms of race, but it's race and racism,
Mhm.
you know, though the kind of connection between those two. If we take that out of it, but we hold on to our racial, cultural selves,
Mhm.
what would you be bringing? What would you be wanting to bring? So it's that kind of, yeah, I guess it's that broader sense of what Black means. It's not just about having experienced racism.
Yeah.
It's other stuff too.
Yeah. I mean, you know, and we've talked about this a bit as well. I'm going to respond in terms of how I'm hearing the question. Part of me, I'm very concerned about my people, right? I'm very concerned about how my people survive in this environment, and in environments overall. So there was a period where it's not a period, because I am still very concerned about it, and I still very much feel that in terms of my purpose, part of it's about supporting us to heal. So whilst there is, yes, definitely a mission around trying to sort of dismantle, you know, racism and so on, my bigger mission is about how I support my people in terms of healing, and development and growth.
Yeah.
And in a way, this group that we're involved with, the anti-racist movement, which I'll give her props, Chantel Thomas founded.
Yeah.
That some of that work can go on in that space.
Absolutely.
And I think for me, that's more of a priority.
Yeah.
Because the lessons and the experience and the wisdoms that we have gained over the years can be deposited in a space that's really going to help those who are coming behind us develop and grow. And we still have struggles in that space.
Yeah.
So why would we pay all of our attention to the mission of our white folks who need to do some work themselves?
Yes.
Right. So they have work to do, and yes, we can contribute to that narrative, but we can't put all our focus in there.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, a lot of our focus in my view, has to be about what our people are going through and how we can kind of help them and equip them as far as we can with the skills to manage it and to survive. Just as I when I'm thinking about like my son and my nieces and my nephews and, you know, those younger people who are coming behind us, you know, I'm always in discussions with them about, you know, what happened to us and how things haven't changed much. It's different because clearly they certainly won't put up with some of the things that we put up with. Uh, but it's that kind of whole legacy thing that I'm far more preoccupied with. Yes, I know there's a job to be done there, but there's a bigger job to be done here.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's what preoccupies me, I think, more now.
Yeah.
And getting our stories out there. This paper that I'm trying to write with you, it's also about that too. It's about telling our narrative, sharing our narrative, not just for the sake of it, but for some of our people who, they will absolutely recognize some of what I'm talking about. But hopefully it will encourage our white colleagues to do some of the work.
Yeah.
Or do the work that they need to do.
Yeah. I would even say, for the sake of it, I think just, those stories need to be out there in the world. Because there's so many stories out there. Ours need to occupy a space too.
Yes.
And people, hopefully our people take something from it. If anybody else gets something from it, that's all right too. But I guess it's having that intention.
Because for so long, we've been either misunderstood or and that leads to us misunderstanding ourselves. We want to sort of develop a sort of a healthy level of dialogue and so that we can move on. I mean, there are a lot of sort of thinkers and writers in our community. They're there, but we just don't know them. We can't hear them. So hopefully in these times where we have access to so much in terms of information, platforms and so on, it's beautiful for that. But we've got to use it constructively.
Which takes us back to your media work, the work you do in the media, getting it out there in all the different ways.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. I had a question from earlier, which was when you were talking about your different curiosities and interests, and you said business is one of the things which enables you to really have a certain type of conversation with your son around business and things. So I was wondering, are there areas of your curiosity that you haven't fully gone into, that you're still aware of, that you might still want to go into?
I mean, one of the things that I'm I guess thankful for, because I made this shift last year, I sort of took a break from my teaching and stepped back and spent some time in the Caribbean, which was great. The mosquitoes weren't, but the time away was great. It was great. But something I guess that I'm really trying to embrace is this whole notion of creativity. And I am so fascinated by creative people. I love to look at their processes and this is performing artists, writers, people, generally painters. I'm really fascinated by creativity, and I want to tap into the creativity within myself. One of the channels for that is obviously as a trainer. There is a degree of creativity that one has to kind of embrace and it's been good to be in the company of folk like yourself and others, where we bounce ideas and we play with ideas and we dialogue about ideas about how we're going to teach things and how we're going to kind of communicate with folk and so on. So for me, that's part of it. It's not the entirety. So I want to go more down that road. I also want to harness the whole writing piece, because many years ago, I was told by an old tutor of mine that Sylvia, one day I can see you're going to write a humorous book.
Oh,
I mean, again, it wasn't so much about what the book, but she kind of saw in me that I enjoyed writing. I had a way with communication and so on. Um, and I think, when you're working in an environment where, when you're working on the plantation, in other words, it's difficult to don't laugh. It's difficult to harness that level of creativity that may be there for you. It's
yeah.
not encouraged.
No,
because,
it's not.
because they want you to continue to produce on the plantation.
Yes, they do.
And
Yes.
of course, you're producing so much on the plantation, you ain't got no energy for that. You know what I mean? You ain't got no energy for the creativity, because you're just producing for the plantation. And I was really beginning to feel that as an educator, that every year it was this level of output that was expected. There was always this, that, and the other to do. I had no headspace
Yeah.
for other things.
Yeah.
Now, having shifted my kind of focus, and I've kind of moved back from the whole teaching space, I feel so much freer. I ain't got no money.
Yeah.
That's another mission. But I feel so much freer to, I'm reading more, I'm reading academic papers, I'm reading other kinds of novels and so on. My son and I, we just recently read a book together and we're talking about it. I just feel cognitively a lot freer.
Yeah.
To explore more of the creativity that may be within me.
Yes.
So that's my big thing at the moment.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds wonderful. That absolutely sounds, because that just creates a different energy.
Yeah.
And then the form of creativity that you want to go with, it will come to you. To you. But you mentioned performing artists. Are you into performance art in any way? Sort of acting. I'm just thinking acting, singing, dancing, whatever other.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, I've just taken up. I used to sing back in the day, right? That was something I did when as a teenager, and at one point had to make a decision: social work or performing arts.
Wow.
And I chose social work.
Oh wow.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. 40 years.
You know what? I just want to say, then you can carry on. I asked you, I text you something. This was way back. This was probably during PSDP or during COVID or something, maybe after COVID. But I asked you, I don't know why, do you sing? And you said, no, I can't. Or, I said, are you a good singer? And you said, no. And so I kind of just took your word for that. Okay. And then I heard you sing. I heard you singing when we went to our planning, when we were at a planning meeting, planning away meeting.
Yeah, that meeting.
She can, what's wrong with it? She can sing. But, so that's interesting that you were.
Yeah.
You are a singer.
Yes, and I mean what I'm kind of trying to do. Again, it's not something I'm going to be thrusting myself in that way, but it's something about what brings you joy.
Yes.
So I'm going to join a choir. We've got our first encounter next week.
Okay.
So again, that was another thing. You see, when you're tied up with your 9 to 5, unless you make and I mean, I do so many things. Yes. There's only so many hours in the day.
Yes.
So again, freeing myself from that enables me, I think, to look at some of the things that bring me joy. I mean, my thing is, and I know it's a bit morbid, as my mother always says, I have less to go than I've already gone.
Yes, that's very true.
So in a way, I'm looking for little things that bring me joy. I love travel, but I can see as time goes on, I will get fed up with it, because getting to the destination is lovely, but travel is losing its allure.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I'm trying to find things small things around me that bring me joy.
Yeah.
And, get myself involved.
Yeah.
When I think about my life and some of the things I've done, and I said earlier I've done a lot of charity work. I still do a lot of charity work for my community, and so I've been doing all that stuff. These are not things I need to discover as I reduce work, because I've always run these things alongside, probably again to my peril, where people again think that Sylv is always available. So now I'm very much trying to embrace creativity, trying to recapture some of the things that brought me joy, and just sort of live a more kind of quality kind of life, and of course continue to share wisdom and all sorts of things, but doing more of what I want to do.
Yes.
I think we've earned that, Sharon, don't you?
Yes, I think so. If we can't do it now, when we're going to do it?
Exactly.
When can we do it? No, absolutely. And I would say there's also something in there about how which I think we have done that, is in our plantation work, whilst we've actually found ways to find joy, creativity, connection, relationship. We've found, even as we're picking the cotton, or whatever we're doing, cutting down the whatever, we found that. And if you think about in terms of slavery itself, our people are very resilient, and they did do that, and they found ways to through all the pain, they sung, they created music, they created art, they created love, they created all kinds of stuff. So but I guess as we get older, we can do more of that. And make that a big area of our life. It's around the joy, doing things because it brings us joy.
Yes. And we certainly, these are lessons we can share with our younger, youngers, so. Because you know what I mean? The plantation is not all.
That's it.
It's not all, and it's robbed us of so much.
It has,
So that's my position.
No, I agree. I agree with that. Well, anything else you want to say?
Are you done with me? Are you done with me?
I think I'm done. I think I'm done with you. I don't know. I think I am.
Yeah, I mean, it's been lovely having this.
I could talk with you for forever. But in terms of any questions, is there, okay, I do have a question. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you were hoping we would?
No, not really. I mean, I think, I said to you, I was a little anxious about doing this because, again, as a coach, a mentor, a clinical supervisor, a leadership trainer and whatever, there is this sort of illusion of perfection, I guess, and this whole thing around, it's almost like a cultish thing about the expert. And I think what we agreed was that it's so important that for me, it's important to show some of my kind of authenticity, potentially risking a level of vulnerability, which, to be honest with you, I have not felt that in our discussion today, Sharon, to be honest. And I think the conversation with you has enabled me to kind of think about some of the things that are going on for me at this particular point in my life. And in terms of my career and my other interests. So I do hope that our conversation has been helpful for those who are listening, because it's certainly been helpful for me.
Good.
And I think because I'm obviously quite used to interviewing people, and you know, providing the space. It's been lovely to be on the receiving end of it.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Mm.
I have to say, I don't know if I want to be on this end of it. It is a pressure though, isn't it? I mean, I haven't found it unpleasant because I could get into what you're saying, you know what I mean? But if I was doing this with somebody who it was just a series of questions and like, I'm not really feeling what there's, I'd be like, well, you ain't got nothing to talk about really. Well, why are we here? You know, but no, so it's been fun, but I can see how it can bring pressure. It could bring a pressure, but I haven't found it pressurizing. I think it's been really good.
No, it's been lovely. It's been lovely. So thank you.
And I have to say, I've really enjoyed when you interviewed me a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago,
yes,
something like that.
Years ago.
I found it so therapeutic. It was, I mean, after we finished, not during, but after we finished, it was like, oh my God, that was so good. I felt really just, yeah.
Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it, to sort of just have somebody listen.
Yes, yeah.
And hear you.
Yeah.
And speak to what you're speaking to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what I felt today.
I'm glad.
And hopefully that's what people feel when they you know, receive the same from me. But
yes, I think I certainly did. I certainly did. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Sharon Jennings. And yeah, do check out our check out the channel. And yeah, let's leave it there. Lovely.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.